Hello, YouTube! 'Tis I, Root-1, and this is my submission for challenge number 26 of Kerbal Space Program, the Discord challenge thing. I've done two of these before. Whatever. So, the challenge this week was to go and rescue Kerbals from various places around the Kerbal system. In my case, I believe I did Mun, Duna, Drez, Bop, Val, Elu, and Moho. There was also Eve as an option, but I tried Eve. I'd never done Eve before, and I miserably failed at Eve. So, on your screen, you can see me just doing the Mun mission, which was, the easiest. And it was actually to the Armstrong Memorial, which is pretty cool. Quick little Easter egg. And just to be clear, there will be spoilers on things like Easter eggs in this video, so if you care about that. And you can just see me now, just sort of raising my apoapsis height to get a good encounter with Mun. And, it's sort of just a standard Mun mission. I sped up this footage very, very fast. You can see this is a very long video, and even so, I've sped it up 20 times. I didn't spend very much time on the surfaces of any of these celestial bodies, but I did cut out a lot of the build, because just nobody needs to see me build the same launch vehicle over and over again. The only thing that really changes is the lander and the interplanetary stage. So that's the only thing I show in terms of build. So now you can see me just landed on Mun. I just talked my way through the entire thing. You can see the Armstrong Memorial, just like I said, not faffing about very much, just immediately going and taking off into an orbit. I went for an equatorial orbit just to make it, easy. Well, it was pretty low down beneath the equator, so you can't go into a perfectly equatorial orbit, but I think you know what I mean. Anyway, so here's me already ejecting from Mun and about to re-enter Kerbin. So just sort of raising my periapsis height so it's, not a stupid amount of g-forces. But don't you worry, there will be a large amount of g-forces on every other mission in this video. So yes, that's gonna be great. So you can see me just recovering the first Kerbal there. Probably should have spent more time on that screen so you can see that I actually rescued them. But whatever. This is now my Duna lander, and as you can see, it's my trademark. It's not trademark, but it's my sort of aerospike. So I think on every single lander in this entire thing, I used aerospikes, just because, they've got nice thrust and they look really cool. That's pretty much the only reason. But for Duna, it does actually have some significance because of how it maintains its efficiency throughout the atmosphere. So here you can see me just... I tried to get more creative with the interplanetary designs this time, instead of just doing, well, what you can see on screen right now, which is sort of just that adapter and then just some fuel tanks just parallel to the engine. But I did turn them a little bit, which is a little bit better, I guess. So that's pretty much there's the launch, and just a standard ascent. I think every single mission here is going to have a standard ascent, so I can just say that right now. Sort of just tipping over to reach 10 kilometers by the time you're 45 degrees, or reach 45 degrees by the time you hit 10 kilometers, and then just circularize. Okay. As you can see, I've already gotten my Duna encounter, or at least maneuver for the encounter, and, I'm pretty sure every single craft I did was very much over-engineered, like huge amounts of Delta V left at the end. In my Val and Bop mission, I did it as one. I think I detached something like 4,500 meters per second Delta V on re-entry to Kerbin. So, yeah, it was the first time I had done a dual mission, so I didn't really know how much it would take. Anyway, so moving on. This mission was pretty good, actually. It took more tries than I care to admit to pinpoint land on the Kerbal. So yeah, nobody's talking about that. It took me 0 tries. It was my first try to land directly on the thing. So nobody will ever know. That's a cool shot there. You can see me executing a quick adjustment burn in the sphere of influence. You can see Ike and Duna. It's gone now, but you could see Ike and Duna looming in the distance. You can just see me circularizing around Duna. That I didn't need to show, me quitting the game. But yeah, anyway, so you can just see me time warping to get the Kerbal right beneath my orbital line, detaching the lander. I forgot to move a Kerbal over before I detached the lander, so quickly had to EVA him over. And then just, create a suborbital, what's it even called? A maneuver node for suborbit or something. Yeah, that. And then you can just see me descending through the atmosphere and doing a beautiful pinpoint landing. Only 2.2 kilometers away? I thought I got it closer than that. Anyway, doesn't matter. You can see the Perseverance, or no. I think, is that Curiosity? I don't actually know what rover that is. Because Curiosity isn't dead, it's still roaming around on Mars. But anyway, here you can see me moving that Kerbal to the ascent vehicle. And then just time warping around until I'm again underneath the orbital line. And then I can just ascend into an inclined orbit, just so that I can match it. With my Duna ascents, I tend to do it like very, very steep because I don't like the atmosphere of Duna. It's sort of tenuous, but then not tenuous. I don't like it is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, now you can just see me executing my rendezvous, and then I don't even know if I'm going to dock. I don't think I'm going to dock because it's not really necessary. But yes, you can see me executing the Lown Lazy method. Wait, no. That's not the Lown Lazy method. Okay, never mind. we don't talk about that. So anyway, I'm just moving the Kerbals back to the interplanetary vessel, and then in preparation, of course. So I was on an inclined Duna orbit, and, there are ways of not being on an inclined Duna orbit and still getting back to Kerbin, but I just decided to modify my orbit to become equatorial. It makes it easier, and I had excess delta V, like I said, so, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. So, now, I'm just time warping around to get a transfer window between Duna and Kerbin, and you can see me just, there's the encounter. Very nice. I'm not gonna this is not a tutorial by any means of doing any of these destinations. In terms of tutorials, if you want a tutorial, Matt Lown, there's not much else to it, but yeah. Anyway, so you can just see me executing a mid-course correction burn to get a very nice, direct smashing into Kerbin's surface. And just to use a bit of fuel, I burned retrograde, reduced the G-forces, parachute deployment, jettisoning of heat shield, and I did this thing, I don't know if you saw it there, but in all of these missions, I did the thing where I cut one of the 2 radial parachutes, and there's absolutely no reason for that, apart from the fact that it looks really cool to be descending on just one parachute sort of asymmetrically. And anyway, now it's into the construction of the Kerbal Rescue vessel, or lander, I guess, and as you can see, of course, it's going to be an aerospike. And I was very surprised on how small all these landers were, but I guess it makes sense because all the other landers I've done for these places have sort of contained a bunch of science on them as well, so they're naturally going to have to be bigger to lug all the science around. So, that's pretty nice, to have very small vessels. Anyway, so you can just see me constructing the interplanetary vessel. Just, I didn't want to do anything special for this one, just because, I'm lazy. But yeah, Dres is significantly farther away from the sun than, Mon or Duna, so I needed a few more solar panels than one normally would. I could have used RTGs. I definitely could have used RTGs, but I tend to avoid RTGs when I can, just because it looks so much cooler to be deploying solar panels. Anyway, so as you can see, sort of just, doing the standard ascent. Guess I can talk about something else. So for this mission, I did mess it up quite a bit. Some people may have already noticed it if you have a keen eye. So on the left-hand side in the staging window, you may notice what's missing. Did you see it? That's right. It's It's missing parachutes, of course. It's missing parachutes. So, I had to get really creative with my Kerbal descent, and you'll just have to see what happens. But it's missing parachutes. That's sort of all you need to know. And as you can see, I'm sort of now just creating my mid-course correction burn inclination adjustment, and it was expensive just because I didn't want to do it very efficiently, because again, I'm lazy. So anyway, you can just see, yeah, getting a very good encounter. I believe the Kerbal here was not in the Dres Canyon, which is kind of a shame, but it's sort of right next to the Dres Canyon. So it's a cool feature, the Dres Canyon. I don't know why everyone is always hating on Dres. I very much like Dres. It's got a low mass, pretty far away, so high science. It looks pretty cool. It's got surface features like the Dres Canyon. Some people say it's, just like a farther away Mun. And I guess that's sort of fair, but, I like it. It's cool. Anyway, so as you can see, I'm now already at Dres. And I'm just, about to circularize around Dres. Or I don't think I actually circularized. I split it up into 2 burns because it's pretty long. So then I just make it elliptical and then circularize in a second burn, like that. And now it's time to detach that lander to then go and rescue the Kerbal. That did not need commentary. But anyway, as you can see, I'm now on a suborbital trajectory. It didn't take me too many tries to get. In fact, I think it might have even been my first try. As you can see, I sort of didn't get it perfect. Had to bounce around a little bit using that aerospike. But anyway, so now I have to move the Kerbal back. But as you can see, he's hovering. And I had to load a quick save to make that not happen. And I think it's just because of the way that this save file was designed with HyperEdit. It sort of made stuff clip into the ground a little bit. And, anyway. So, I don't know if you could see the Dres Canyon. I probably should have showcased that a little bit better. But, as you know, I am a terrible YouTuber. I make terrible videos. So, anyway, now doing the same thing as on Duna, just docking, or I don't even think docking, but yes, rendezvous with the orbital return stage, the interplanetary vessel, I guess. So just by killing velocity relative to target, pointing at target, burning a little bit, and rinsing and repeating. And you get a very nice close encounter. So yeah, I didn't even bother packing a docking port on that lander or on the interplanetary vessel. But now, it was at exactly this moment when I realized I didn't have parachutes. And I thought, well then, what am I going to do about this? But I came up with a solution, and I thought, it's fine. I can also do an amazing show-off, which you will see by the end of this video. So, now just doing a very, very, very nice return to Kerbin. It was pretty easy, just because my descending node was pretty close to my periapsis, so I didn't have to do very much of an inclination adjustment. And you can just see me, executing that ejection burn from Dres there. So, Dres is on a very inclined orbit, makes it relatively difficult, but if you get lucky, it's easy. Isn't that always the case? When you get lucky, it's easy. So, moving on, with this, the reason this is so sped up, and why a lot of this is sort of skimmed over, is because by the end of this, I had around 30 hours of footage. That's including my attempt at an Eve landing, and without that, it was something like 21 maybe hours of footage. So, of course, I spent a long time on that Eve lander just for it to not work. Kinda sad. But yes, as you can see, I'm now returning to Kerbin, and you get some few fireworks, very nice. And now, as you can see, there are 0 parachutes, so I just had them EVA, and all of them just deploy their parachutes really quick, and then I showed off my parachuting skills by landing them all in the exact same spot. So there was the first one landed, and now, really quickly, the second one. I had to do this all very quickly before they hit the ground. So, there you go. There's the 3 Kerbals landed, and I just had to recover the vessels one by one. I like how the EVA, the Kerbals, they're vessels rather than people, because you have to recover. Anyway, so now you can see I'm constructing my next lander. Gosh, is this already Vol and Bop? I think it might be. Yeah, it is. And as you can see, I'm clipping an RTG, so, that's something. This time, I did not forget parachutes. But this time, I also did need to have docking ports on this one, because I would be using the same lander for both Vol and Bop. So, they needed to dock and have the interplanetary stage take them from Vol to Bop. So, now that that's done, they're sort of docked together there. I can just construct this stage, I guess. As you can see, I'm just putting a huge amount of Delta V in it. For anyone who's actually done sort of a mission like this, you can see that I was not experienced with Joule missions, because I also completely forgot that you could capture completely using a Tylo assist. So that's something that I forgot, and that's really cool. Something that you can do. Wow, that's just blank footage of me doing nothing for like 5 seconds. I am a good editor, thank you very much. So, yeah, we don't talk about that. And as you can see, I'm sort of asparagaging? Wow, asparagus staging some fuel tanks on that interplanetary stage. And just, attaching, clipping some parts. You can see all the parts that I'm clipping, right? And then I auto-strutted the entire thing, and you can just imagine what happened, the Kraken attacks that followed. It was not fun. Not fun one bit. One bit? At all? Not fun at all. Let's do that. So, now, I did a major screw-up on this one as well. I did a lot of screw-ups throughout this entire thing. This one, I managed to bring way too many Kerbals. As you can see, I brought 3 Kerbals, and if you think about it, I need to rescue 2 Kerbals, one from Bop and one from Vol. And where are they gonna come home? On which interplanetary, or on which re-entry capsule? And, well, the answer is, they didn't. I left Bill and Bob on the surface of both Bop and Vol. So, yeah, because the requirements of the challenge were to rescue the Kerbals that were stranded. It didn't say anything about stranding other Kerbals in the process. So, nobody will ever know. In fact, probably no one would have actually even noticed if I hadn't said that. So, I'm a terrible criminal. Anyway, so as you can see, I split up the burn into 2 different burns. One to elongate at Kerbin, and one to then eject from Kerbin. And that just spreads out the burn across periapsis and prevents the periapsis from dipping into Kerbin's atmosphere. So, this was pretty big burn, but of course it was Joule, so I got an encounter straight off the bat, because it's got a very, very large sphere of influence, which I do quite like. And, you see, there was a few problems with this. I didn't actually realize it was my first time ever doing a Joule mission. I don't know if I've ever said that. So my first time doing a Tylo capture and everything. So at first I did a Tylo capture, but in the wrong direction. So I was orbiting like against all the planets. So I lost, and I got so confused. There was basically just pure confusion for a solid maybe hour and a half or so. Of course, all of that got cut out, and I realized what the problem was. And the reason that I sort of did that at first is because the other one, the normal Tylo capture, which I'm doing now, actually requires me getting very, very close to Joule. And I thought, there's no way that's right. So, as you can see there, I'm getting very close to Joule, and now doing my Tylo assist. Probably could have slowed that down a little bit. Great editing skills, thank you very much. And I also, for some reason, ended up orbiting against the planets anyway, but sort of just a very, very low orbit, so I could easily correct for it with just 200 meters per second of LTV. So, I also did a lathe assist for no reason in particular. I think just to sort of lower my orbit again, get it closer to sort of Vol's orbit, and it was pretty good. Yeah, you can see lathe there in the background. Now, it's just a matter of faffing about with maneuver nodes to get a Vol encounter. So I didn't really anticipate how easy it was. I'd heard how easy it was, but how really, really, really easy it was to just hop around the Julian system, just using Tylo and Lathe and other bodies, even Vol, to sort of gravity assist around the Joule system. So it's good to know. And as you can see now, I'm about to circularize around Vol. I don't know, because that seemed a little expensive. 1,200 meters per second delta V seems a little expensive to already be in the Julian system and then have to circularize for that much. That seems a bit excessive, and I don't know why. So if anyone has any ideas, I would love to know. But as you can see now, I'm circularized, and I'm just about ready to descend onto I don't know what their names are, but onto the stranded Kerbal, I guess, yes. So, it was, of course, in the nighttime. Like, why would it not be in the nighttime, right? So, yeah, be prepared for darkness and not being able to see the landing whatsoever. Anyway, yeah, there you go. You can just see the engine burning and nothing else. And there you go, I'm landed. I just had to wait until the daytime, and as you can see, I am at Valhenge, which is a very, very nice place. It's basically a Stonehenge, but on Val, on Minmus's minty or larger minty cousin, I guess. I've heard it been described that way. So as you can see, there's me leaving Bill. Was it Bill or Bob? One of the two. Just leaving them on the surface in the same place that the Kerbal I rescued got left. So, yeah. Yep. We don't talk about that. Now you can see me doing the same rendezvous, the same rendezvous that I've done in other missions, but now I'm actually going to dock because I need to take the lander to a new location. So, just going to do the same rendezvous as before, just, very, very inefficient, waiting until the closest point, killing velocity relative to the target, pointing towards the target, burning, and then doing the thing. And now, as you can see, I've already docked. It was, of course, on the dark side so that you couldn't see anything, naturally. But it was the famous Lound lazy method of docking, which I've talked about a lot and now has finally happened. So now, you can just see me ejecting from Vol. I almost said Lathe, but I raised the orbital height up to around Tylo's orbital height, or intersecting with Tylo's orbital height. And that meant that I could get a Tylo encounter, and therefore a Tylo assist, and just use that to raise my apoapsis up to sort of the height of Bob or Paul. I'm pretty sure it's Bob. I should check these things before I record commentaries, but there you can see that's that Tylo assist, and now it has raised my orbital height up to around Bob's. And you can see that my descending node now intersects with Bob's orbital height, and that means that if I time warp around enough, eventually I will get an encounter, which you can see right there. And sort of just an quick adjust of 50 meters per second delta V, and I'd never really looked at Bob for some reason, and it's just a mound. It's kind of like Gilly a little bit, just sort of a mound, an asteroid of sorts. Very large asteroid that has been captured. It doesn't look like, and since it's in a weird inclined orbit, one can sort of assume that it's not really a moon, but instead a captured asteroid that's a bit large, sort of coming in at a weird angle, maybe getting a gravity assist off Tylo or something, and then settling into a very weird, eccentric, inclined orbit. So, yeah, that's wonderful. And now I've babbled through circularization and everything, and suborbit, so now I'm on a suborbital trajectory. Now, just lowering, this was a very, very nice pinpoint landing. I got within, just 50 meters of the target. In fact, the target thing even disappeared. And as you can see, it's the Deep Space Kraken. I didn't actually realize it was on BOP until I sort of landed here. Anyway, you can see, again, I've left one of the Kerbals just on the surface there, because I'm a good person. Yeah. And as you can see, I went way overkill on my ascent and had to lower it, but of course it doesn't matter whatsoever because there's barely any gravity here. And just there's a reason why those orbits are so unaligned, and it's just because of the fact that that BOP is, I don't know if it's tidally locked, but for some reason the the orbital. So when you time warp, the surface doesn't rotate like differently from your orbital height. So I can't actually position it so that the lander is directly under the thing. Well, anyway, I've just babbled through docking again, but now that I don't need the lander anymore, I can just go ahead and transfer all the fuel over to the interplanetary stage, also giving me a delta V boost that I most certainly do not need. And now you can see me planning an escape from Bop and another, you guessed it, Tylo assist. I don't know if I actually succeeded on this Tylo assist to get ejected from the Julian system. I think I did. But, yeah, I this was a while ago. I've been doing Moho missions since then. But, anyway, as you can see, there's the Tylo assist, and it's very nicely ejecting me, except it didn't really. It sort of just ejected me a little bit, but not really that nicely. I don't know what I'm saying. You'll see what I mean. Because I wasn't on a good enough Kerbal window, I guess? Yeah, Kerbal window. So I sort of just had to eject from Joule, wait until I was at a Joule to Kerbal window, and then sort of just lower my periapsis from there. And I could have done this better with a Tylo assist, but I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm lazy. Anyway, so now you can see that mighty expensive burn. Not really that expensive. 1600 meters per second delta V. So yeah, just doing that, and then using Kerbal Alarm Clock to sort of move me down to my descending node, so I can do another quick adjustment, of course. And that meant that I could get a surface intersect with Kerbal just in preparation for my descent and landing. So, and now as we look at our Kerbals sitting in their thing, well, they're not there anymore, but they were just a second ago, you can see that Bob and Bill have unfortunately been left in the Julian system, but they sacrificed themselves so that Centas and Septima Kerman could live on and be sacrificed for the good of the challenge. And as you can see, that's a very bare looking interplanetary stage now. And there you go, there was the re-entry, and as you can see, I cut the parachutes again, just, because it looks cool. Is it Crew Dragon that has asymmetric parachutes? I feel like it is. I know there's some re-entry capsule that has asymmetrical parachutes for some reason, and I've got no idea why. But yes, as you can see, I'm now constructing my Elu lander, and the base thing sort of just wasn't enough, so I put some, spherical fuel tanks on, just because it was cool, I guess. No really other reason. So anyway, I say anyway a lot, I feel like. I'm pretty sure, because I looked at a little bit of my commentaries, and I realized that the one thing that I say a lot is anyway. Anyway, so there's this interplanetary vessel here, and this gave me so many headaches, and this one was my screw up for this mission, of course. So you might be looking at this and thinking, that is overkill for Elu, and you would be 100% right. And the reason for that is that somehow, the way these parts were routed, some of the big fuel tank chunks just were not accessible to the engines for some reason, which meant I didn't actually realize that until I sort of reached Elu. But that meant that all the fuel in those fuel tanks was just dead weight. It was just being lugged around by those engines, just not doing anything, just not being useful whatsoever. And it wasn't good, and it just meant that I over-engineered the craft a lot, and yeah. I mean, I guess it's good that I had some extra delta V that I could transfer from those fuel tanks, but not that much. It was a bit too much. Anyway, you can see me deploying the fairing there, and just completing my Kerbal circularization. I say I did a very, very good Elu mission. It was better than some of my other missions on this in this challenge. But then again, it was messed up by my extreme failure at um, with the construction of this thing. I'm sort of I'm losing my enthusiasm here for this mission because it was by this point it was a lot. Yeah, this challenge was quite a bit of work to do. So, that's yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but um, I don't particularly know what I'm saying. So here you can see me just finally ejecting from Kerbin. It was this. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but for some reason, like maneuver nodes and sometimes like sphere of influence predictions, they get messed up when you engage time warp. I don't know if anyone else has noticed it, but it's only sometimes, and I can't figure out like when it happens and when it doesn't. But like the orbit sort of gets messed up a little bit. It's I'm not happy about it. Squad, fix it, or give me Kerbal Space Program 2. Okay, yeah. So now you can see that I have gotten an encounter, or not quite yet, but pretty close to Elu, or with Elu, an encounter with Elu, not to Elu. So you can see I'm just getting that nice and close, just a low orbit of sorts. This Kerbal wasn't on anything specific. It wasn't on an Easter egg or anything. It was sort of just equatorial on Elu. So now you can see I'm relatively close to Elu, just making another very, very slight adjustment. And then I am going to time warp into the sphere of influence and then create a maneuver node to pull, to circularize, I guess. I don't know why that needed explaining, but yeah. Of course, since Elu is on an eccentric and inclined orbit, you will always be coming in sort of not equatorial, and it will always be, well, unless you like brute force it, it will always be sort of not great in terms of your inclination coming in. So actually, an interesting thing that I found was my elliptical orbit was pretty well aligned, sort of just with the inclination, which meant that at apoapsis I could do an inclination change for very, very cheap. It ended up being 4 meters per second of delta V, and that sort of it wasn't perfect, of course, because my descending node wasn't quite at apoapsis, but it was close enough. Okay, so then you can see me just circularizing, lowering my orbit, just so that it's circular. That is what circularization means, making the orbit circular. Okay, anyway, so now you can just see me time warping until it's sort of pretty much on the light side, and then just doing a descent. Elu does rotate pretty fast compared to some of the other places I've visited so far, so I did have to accommodate for that, and as you can see, my amazing EVA skills just toppling that Kerbal just on the ground. So, like I said, no real faffing about on the surface, just sort of transfer crew and straight into the ascent and orbit. So, there, you can see me just making sure that my orbit sort of is relatively close to the interplanetary vessel, and then sort of just time warping around until I get a very close intersect, which you can see right there. And now you can see I've rendezvoused. Now for the loud lazy method of docking, you target the docking ports on both craft, and they will maintain alignment as you burn towards each other. So now you can just see me. Now is when I figured out that some of those fuel tanks weren't being drained for some reason, and yeah, that made me quite sad. It was, yeah. Anyway, so here you can just see me transferring as much of that redundant fuel into useful fuel, so moving it into the right fuel tanks as possible. And now, as you can see, I've got 6,000 meters per second of delta V, of usable delta V, which is so overkill. Yeah. I would like to do this mission over. I was thinking just scrapping this entire mission and doing it over again, but I couldn't be bothered, to be completely honest. It was just a bit much. So here you can see me, I've already gotten my Kerbin encounter, just by lowering my orbital height, and just getting a surface or even, I guess, atmospheric intersect with Kerbin. So now you can see that that has happened, and I'm just creating a Kerbal alarm clock to get into the sphere of influence of Kerbin, and there we go, just sort of entering, and not much else to say, just normal entry with the parachutes, drop the heat shield, cut one of the parachutes, and land. There we go. And now I can begin construction of the final vessel, final and most difficult vessel, which was Moho. And it was, the Kerbal was on the Mohole, which is a hole at the top of Moho. That was pretty self-explanatory. The reason it's so difficult is because Moho, being very, very close to the sun, once you get down to that orbital height and your apoapsis is still up at Kerbin's orbital height, your orbital speed relative to Moho is extremely high. So you need to have circularization burns of sometimes even up to 4,500 meters per second delta V. There are normally cheaper ways of doing that, I think, by doing Eve gravity assists, but does it look like I'm going to do an Eve gravity assist? Or does it look like I'm just going to put an excessive amount of fuel tanks on this thing and an excessive amount of nuclear engines? Yes, exactly. There we go. Anyway, so, like I said, it's on the pole of Moho. The Kerbal that I need to rescue is on the pole of Moho, which also provides an interesting challenge because of, you know, ascent inclination. If I can speech, I guess. So here, just launching this, it actually wasn't too big of a payload in the end, sort of just, you know, it could be done pretty easily with just 2 side cores instead of, you know, a lot. And now I actually got the DLC. I didn't have the DLC here, but I noticed that the DLC was on sale right after I had finished this, so I quickly went and got both DLCs, which I am very happy with. With the Saturn V parts, the very larger parts, and the sort of the intermediate parts, and the Wolfhound engine. I do like the Wolfhound engine. I will be using the DLCs and the Wolfhound engine specifically in the next challenge, Challenge 27. Sort of, I don't know, maybe I'll even put that on the end screen here, so that people watching in the far future, not in the far future, but in the future, can just immediately go to that challenge. But as we all know, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I am lazy. So there's a solid chance that I will not do that. So here you can just see me ejecting from Kerbin and lowering. No, actually I wasn't ejecting from Kerbin. I was just elongating my orbit so I can split up the burn into 2 parts. So now I can do my ejection burn, which you can see on screen at the moment. And, well, it was long. Yeah, to lower your orbital height that much, it takes a lot of fuel and a lot of time. So now you can see just my amazingness, sort of creating a retrograde burn at your descending node and just pulling retrograde on that until it sort of the intersect nodes swing around and you get an encounter. This is not a tutorial, again, like I said. I recommend Laon Aerospace 2, the second one, for, I think I already said this. I don't know why I'm promoting other creators, but this is how I learned to play Kerbal Space Program, with Laon Aerospace 2, the second one. I think even the first one, back in the early days before the second one existed. So, now you can see I'm about to enter Moho's sphere of influence, and now I have, and now you can see that massive 4,200 meters per second circularization, or capture burn, I guess. And I split it up into 2 again. It didn't really help to split it into 2. It only made a difference of 200 meters per second, which is minuscule compared to the rest. But I could also do some inclination adjustments at apoapsis, which is pretty good. And as you can see, somehow I don't even know what happened, but you see my periapsis actually got lowered into the surface just because of how long and how inefficient that burn was. So just it didn't really matter. I just had to do a quick puff of the nuclear engines, and it didn't really affect it. But now you can see just circularizing instead of having an elongated orbit with that stage. And then flinging the lander away, and now doing my amazing precision landing. This was rather difficult because of how mountainous the poles are of pretty much every single pretty much every single body in all of the Kerbal system has very mountainous and rugged terrain up at the surface. So I don't know if you caught it there, but I sort of did a tumble when I touched down. And now you can't go to the mohole and not do a mohole dive, right? Like, I mean, look at that. Okay, we're not going to talk about how he just got destroyed, but quickly load the quick save. Anyway, so this is on such a steep slope that I tried to land, and I basically rolled down the mountain quite a bit. So I had to take off again, fly back up, and sort of do it a little bit better than before. And in the end, you could actually see a temperature gauge appearing there. I'm actually that close to the sun that the Kerbal EVA just had a temperature gauge appear. So, you know, I probably should have put radiators on these vessels on Moho missions, because it's not strictly necessary, but it's the only real excuse that you normally get to use radiators in Kerbal Space Program. So I should use those more often when doing Moho missions. Or maybe even Eve missions. I could definitely use radiators for Eve missions. So anyway, I'm transferring all the remaining fuel from those Oscar fuel tanks to the interplanetary stage. And, well, didn't give me too much more Delta V, just a little kick, which is always nice, and then I fling away that lander, and then I can prepare and begin planning my Kerbin return. And I'm sure there are better ways of doing Moho to Kerbin things than I normally do, but I'm lazy. I can't be bothered. Somebody should count how many times I've said I'm lazy in this commentary, but yeah, you can see that I sort of just raise my apoapsis up so that the ascending node, or maybe descending node, yeah, I think descending node intersects with Kerbin's orbital line, and then I just engage better time warp hyperwarp, and then just time warp around until those intersect nodes get relatively close, and then I can make an adjustment using a quick engine burn. And as you can see, it wasn't too hard, and I got a Kerbin encounter right there. If it will just happen, there it is. And so I can execute that maneuver node just to get a Kerbin encounter relatively cheap. And as you can see, I planned my Delta V amazingly, just absolutely smashingly on this mission, being left with just about 300 meters per second Delta V, which is really solid, if you ask me. That's good planning on my part. There were some very nice fireworks on that one, detaching a little bit late, but as you can see, that's pretty much it. That's this challenge done. Thank you very much for watching.